Hi, and welcome to BioQuest. My name is Letitia Smith, and I am one of the trainers here in the Northeast region. Today, we're going to cover material and training for telehealth services. Here's a list of the objectives that will be covered today. We'll discuss what exactly is telehealth, how to orient your clients to these services. We'll go over specific telehealth documentation, the expectations of both the clinician and the client, telehealth etiquette, ethical listening as it applies to telehealth. And lastly, we'll go over interventions that can be implemented during the use of telehealth services. Let's start with what is telehealth. The Ohio Counselor Social Work, Marriage, and Family Board described telehealth services as counseling, social work, or marriage and family therapy in any form offered, rendered, or supported by electronic or digitally assisted approaches, to include when the counselor, social worker, or marriage and family therapist and the client are not located in the same place during the delivery of services, or when the electronic systems or digitally assisted systems are used to support in-person face-to-face therapy. In other words, it is the practice of caring for patients remotely when the provider and client are not physically present with each other, which also applies to TBS, nursing, and medication management. Each license board has their own additional regulations on telehealth services. The Ohio Administrative Code, or the OAC, it's 4731-37-01, states the standard of care for a telehealth visit is the same as the standard of care for an in-person visit. Also, the healthcare professional shall follow all standard of care requirements. I have listed the website address for the Ohio Administrative Code at the end of this video. Telehealth has become the new normal. So due to the COVID-19 virus, telehealth has become more popular and accessible method to providing behavioral health services to those unable to attend in-person appointments. With this being the new normal since COVID, many are experiencing symptoms of anxiety, depression, and other mental health symptoms. And for those with existing diagnoses, symptoms may be intensified and more frequent. Not only do our clients have to conform to a new way of receiving services, it is also an adjustment for clinicians as well. Both clinicians and clients have had to adjust to this newer form of delivery of mental health services and become familiar with new protocols, new ways of engaging, all while managing the need to protect privacy and provide services via telehealth in a confidential manner. The great news is several more people have been able to receive the necessary services they need and overcome obstacles that have been preventing them from attending in-person appointments. We need to keep our VPBS policies in mind as well as the regulatory requirements. So it is the responsibility of the provider to assure that the equipment meets the standards sufficient to assure confidentiality of communication, and to assure telehealth picture and audio are sufficient to assure real-time interaction between the client and the provider. The provider must have a physical location in Ohio or have access to a physical location in Ohio where clients may opt to receive services that are being provided via telehealth. So all services provided by Interactive Telehealth shall begin with the verification of the client through a name and password, which will be the client's home address. You'll also require that the client provide the street address and city where they are located at the beginning of each session, utilizing interactive telehealth for safety and emergency purposes. Here at ViaQuest, we are accredited through the Commission on Accreditation of Rehabilitation Facilities, also known as CARF. CARF is the organization that establishes standards by which treatment facilities can be assessed. It also provides review services to ensure the standards are continuously being met over time. One way we ensure here at ViaQuest that we are in compliance with CARF to maintain our accreditation is through the equipment we use during the service during the delivery of services. So at FileQuest will provide a secure telehealth platform that is HIPAA compliant. Clinicians will use their FileQuest computer and the approved platform. The IT department will ensure equipment is set up on your computer, and prior to each session, you should log on early to ensure that things are set up, and you can even practice with your supervisor or a coworker. The IT department will maintain the license of our telehealth platform and will ensure updates to your FileQuest computer. You'll want to ensure that you're maintaining your computer by following the directed security updates. Safety considerations. Remember to ensure your laptop is kept in a safe location at all times and ensure the privacy of your client's appointment. Do not leave your laptop in your car or in an unsecure area. Infection control. If providing telehealth at a facility where you have clients or others who may have access to your laptop or they may touch your laptop, you want to ensure that you're disinfecting in between everyone touching your laptop, wash your hands frequently, and even wipe down your equipment. Troubleshooting. Ensure you have a secured internet connection by securing directly into the Ethernet cable, having a jetpack or a Wi-Fi connection, and if you continue to have connection or platform issues, please call the IT department to troubleshoot the issues. Their number is 614-339-0888. Here are some things that you may want to consider, as all clients may not be appropriate to receive telehealth services. So some clients may not have the ability to engage in telehealth because of maybe cognitive functioning, or maybe they can't afford the technology. Maybe they don't have the funds to purchase a laptop or a desktop or a tablet or an iPhone. So they may not be appropriate. Or maybe you have some clients who are frightened of technology, or even some that just don't have the adequate space to ensure privacy. You also may have clients who have active SUDs or substance use disorders, psychoses, domestic violence or abuse issues, verbal limitations, anything along those lines that your client may not be appropriate. So you'll want to screen for safety issues. You'll get a thorough suicidal and homicidal history, and there may just be times when a face-to-face encounter is necessary. For example, if you have an individual who is chronically suicidal, or they're unable to effectively participate due to a communication or a tech limitation. Just like we orient our clients when we begin face-to-face services with them, we'll want to do the same thing when we're providing telehealth services. So every client should receive an orientation to telehealth services. You'll want to begin the conversation by explaining that telehealth services are very similar to receiving services in person. Explain that telehealth is like an in-person visit that is just done using an appropriate form of technology, such as a computer, tablet, or cell phone. Also, you'll want to establish a way of confirming the identity of the client in each session. You'll want to make sure your client understands the risks that are associated with this service. So for privacy, make sure they have a space where they will be they'll be able to have a private session. Make sure they have a door that no one can hear them. You can even establish a safe word or a sign, a signal that the client can give you if they feel their privacy has been compromised, to alert you to end the services or to get help. So you want to also make sure that your client understands that while their session is confidential, you are still a mandated reporter. Also, please ensure your client understands that results cannot be guaranteed when completing telehealth sessions, which is the same for in-person face-to-face sessions. Informed consent and orientation. You'll want to clearly review with your client about informed consent, which is our consent form, which you can find located in SmartCare in your client's chart. Make sure it is signed by either your client or their guardian if they have one. So you want to discuss the possible risks that may be involved. So telehealth is voluntary on both the client and the clinician's end. You'll want to discuss the risks of entering private information when using a public access computer or one that is on a shared network. Caution your client against using autofill for their username and passwords. Also, for yourself, as much as you can, try not to use autofill. Go ahead and type in your full username and password. If your client is using a work computer, make sure your client knows their own company's policy regarding use of work computers for personal communication. Discuss technology troubles for failure to connect, distortion, bandwidth, breaches, and what will your procedure be if any of those problems should occur. You'll want to provide written procedures for various types of follow-up when the client does not appear for a remote session. Review the policy on how it will be dealt with if a client is late, if they cancel or just don't show up. Or you'll want to also go over the discharge policy we have here at BPBS. Consider a time limit for non-response before an additional person will be contacted. This can be their emergency contact, guardian, or maybe they have a support staff in their home. Inform the client of who else might contact them on your behalf. For example, if you have someone who is working at the front desk that maybe schedules your appointments, or maybe they reach out if there's a cancellation or you're running late, make sure your client knows who that person would be that could potentially contact them. Plan for emergencies. Creating a safety plan is essential and should include the emergency backup numbers for the location of the client in case of a medical emergency or mental health crisis. You will want to utilize the referral list for your specific region, which can be found on the second page of your region's discharge letter. Now that we have oriented our client to telehealth, we have explained the risks and addressed any questions that they may have. We've talked about technology and ensuring that you have a backup plan in the event of an issue. Now let's move on to documentation. So you'll want to ensure that you are always meeting medical necessity. Ensure there is written consent for telehealth services. Include accurate start and stop times. Select the telehealth dropdown under the service tab of the progress note in SmartCare for your mode of delivery. Neither therapists nor nurse practitioners are able to build interactive complexity when providing telehealth services. Moving from documentation, let's take a look at safety planning. You'll want to make sure there is a documented safety plan with periodic updates or notations on when it was reviewed with the client. Each clinician is expected to review a plan of safety with their client at the initial session and briefly at the end of every session. A written safety plan must be in the medical record. Each session must contain a brief review of the safety plan, and you have to document that you reviewed the safety plan within your progress note. Now that we know that we must review their safety plan, let's ensure we know what to include in their safety plan. So you'll need to make sure that you have the physical location of the client during the telehealth session, verify the client's phone number and address for safety and emergency purposes, verify the patient support person has not changed, and if it has, you can go ahead and update that. For client privacy, you want to have reasonable assurance that the client is in a private setting. If necessary, you can conduct a room check with a 360-degree view with the camera on the client side. You'll want to do some risk assessments. Make sure your client doesn't have access to firearms. Make sure there's no potential for domestic violence. You'll want to make sure that they don't have access to drugs and alcohol, or even complete a suicide and homicidal risk assessment. You'll also want to know what city your client is located in and where the nearest hospital is. And you also, again, want to have a code word to stop the session if something occurs. Now we will look at provider considerations. These are for the clinicians. Providing services via telehealth is going to be a little different from your typical face-to-face session. but it's still good practice to set and go over your boundaries and session expectations. So you will want to establish ground rules for the client. You'll want to ensure they are appropriately dressed from head to toe. There's an appropriate space to conduct the sessions. You want to also make sure your client is sitting up. You don't want them sitting on the bed, laying on the couch. You want them sitting up. You can ask that they have an appropriate background. Typically, you'll want a blank background like I have here. Because I know me, I can get distracted easily. And if I have a client that has a lot of decorations on the wall, I'll start focusing on that. So you can ask your client to make sure they're sitting in front of a blank wall. You want to go over your boundaries and expectations for the use of their cell phone. You can ask them to put it on silent, maybe even do not disturb. Ask them not to take any phone calls or respond to any text messages during your session. Attempts to make sure outside noise and interruptions are minimized. For privacy, you'll discuss who the client may want to possibly have involved in their sessions. These would be considered visitors, and they need to discuss that with you the session prior to having their visitor in their session with them. Also, you want to discuss what happens if there is a suspicion that your client is intoxicated. So there are many things that can go wrong during a session. Some may be out of your control. With that being said, you want to make sure you are prepared as much as possible. You want to be aware and have a plan for any potential boundary violations. Be professional at all times. Due to the method of delivery, boundaries tend to be a little less formal, but you still have to be professional. You'll want to familiarize yourself with our BPPS policies and procedures, and make sure you are comfortable with the technology that is being used. Practice, practice, practice. You want to check the lighting in the room, give a quick glance for anything that may distract you. You want to practice making eye contact, even listen to your voice so you won't be alarmed when you hear yourself for the first time. Be sure you are communicating effectively, slow down your speech, look into the camera, and be animated. Manage your expectations and the client's expectations around the limits of technology. Provider beliefs around telehealth can positively or negatively impact the encounter, meaning how you feel about the services and possibly the platform. Your client can pick up on that. So make sure you're staying positive. Talk with other clinicians about their experiences using telehealth platforms. You can ask them for any tips or tricks. And be mindful of how your beliefs about telehealth may be impacting your work. Here are some clinical challenges to keep in mind as well. Some clients have difficulty developing a therapeutic alliance across distance. Clients with psychoses and dementia may feel discomfort with technology, and they may experience emotional distance from the provider. You may have difficulties managing a client's emotions during the session. When you're in person, it's easy if the session becomes emotional to just hand your client a tissue or maybe a pat on the shoulder. But keep in mind that you have screens in place, so you can't just reach out and physically help your client. So you'll want to think ahead of time. If you have a client who becomes emotional, how are you going to handle that? So you'll have a plan in mind so it won't scare you the first time it happens, or if it does happen. So compromise client safety. Privacy issues related to technology, and elevated risk of self-harm and harm to others if your clients dysregulate quickly without professional staff there who can intervene. Technical challenges can cause frustrations and interfere with therapeutic relationship. Inadequate space in the home or lack of privacy can be dangerous to patients with unstable or abusive living arrangements. Personal hygiene. Think ahead of time of how you are going to determine if this is an issue that your client is currently experiencing. Come up with a list of questions, have them readily available so you can ask those specific questions so you can determine exactly what's going on with your client. It takes more effort on the part of the therapist or the clinician to read body language over telehealth. You can't see them, their whole body. You can't tell if their arms are crossed or their legs are crossed and they are possibly not as engaged as they would be in person. So you'll want to practice reading body language. Faces, you'll be closer to your client's face. Now, this screen, they can zoom in on your face, you can zoom in on theirs, so be a little bit closer. Cultural differences may be more challenging and may be hard to pick up on different cues. The shared presence and surroundings that enable both parties to be attuned to each other, you may not be able to pick up on different things. The clinician needs to be mindful of their own body language, especially if you're on a tight schedule. If it's getting close to the end of your session, you want to make sure you're keeping track of the time. It's very important that you're paying attention to the time so that you don't want to have your client seem as if you're rushing them, you're not engaged with them, you're not focused on them or what they're saying. So just make sure you're keeping track of the time. Now we'll jump into telehealth etiquette. Be prepared and on time for your scheduled sessions. Ensure privacy to the best extent possible. Eliminate or minimize background noise. You can use headphones during your sessions so that others cannot hear what is being said. You can also encourage your client to use headphones, and that may give them a little bit more assurance that others can't hear what is being talked about. Don't eat or chew gum. Don't answer your phone, just like you set the boundaries and expectations that your client doesn't use their phone. They don't accept calls, text messages. You'll want to adhere to the same rules. Put your phone on do not disturb, turn the volume all the way down, put it on vibrate, whatever you have to do. If you take notes during your session, let the client know ahead of time so they don't think that you're not paying attention to them or you're being rude. You want to make sure that you're being present during their entire session. Dress professionally, both on top and on bottom. You never know if something may happen and you may have to stand up unexpectedly. So make sure you dress professionally. Eliminate anything from your background. Just like I stated before, try to sit in front of a blank wall. And make sure your computer, iPhone, or iPad, or your phone is fully charged, whichever device you're using, make sure it is charged ahead of time. So here is your provider self-checklist. Take a selfie or look in the mirror. Make sure that your facial image is positive. Everything about you reads positive. Make sure that the computer is at eye level for the video. Check your camera in camera. So that means just pull up your Zoom or your Teams meetings beforehand, turn on your camera, and you can see what your client sees. They can see the whole background. You can see everything that they see. Make sure that your background is neutral. You can even use a divider behind your chair, in between your chair and the wall. And your session should be conducted in a private location, such as a home office or a room with a door. Have any tools, such as maybe you're doing an assessment or you're completing evaluations, any interactive projects that you're doing with your client. You want to make sure that you have all of that material printed out and ready ahead of time so that you're not fumbling through papers and trying to get things together. That should all be situated before you begin. If you're one that likes to share your screen or share handouts electronically, you'll want to practice doing that prior to your session. You can do that with your supervisor during your time in supervision, or you can even set up a practice session with one of your coworkers, and you can share your screen and handouts then to make sure you know exactly what you're doing. If possible, you want to plug directly into the Wi-Fi router for better connectivity and use a platform that is encrypted. Move around in between sessions. Get up, shake it out, close your eyes, take a breath. You'll want to schedule yourself some breaks in between your sessions. It's best not to do everything back to back. You want to give yourself some time to breathe in between. Educate yourself about telehealth and look for new ideas to keep your client engaged during sessions. And use supervision and talk to others providing telehealth services for additional support. We are going to take a moment to discuss ethical listening. This information comes to us from the DHOW group. So what is ethical listening? That is having both your body and your mind present. You're listening to comprehend the speaker's point completely and accurately. You're listening without prejudgment, and you're polite and attentive. You're reducing the distractions around you. You're listening for ideas, not just words. Judgment will happen, but how you listen with those judgments in mind is important. Ask open-ended follow-up questions. Be curious. Always ask what, ask why. Try to avoid those closed-ended questions where they can just answer by simply saying yes or no. You want to be an absorber and not just an observer. Remember, there is a huge difference between hearing and listening. Let's compare. Hearing is accidental. It's involuntary. It's effortless. Hearing is something that just happens. But listening is intentional. It's a skill. And as we all know, skills need to be learned. And to learn them, you have to practice them. Effective listening is more important than talking. You'll want to ensure you are listening to what your client has to say rather than just hearing their words. Here are some challenges with telehealth regarding ethical listening. Telehealth can cause feelings of fatigue in clinicians. Let's look at some possibilities as to why. There are distractions everywhere. It can be the sound of traffic in the background, dogs barking, birds chirping, people in other rooms talking, something you may not notice in a typical day, but it's just the air conditioning or the heat cutting on or off. Those can all be potential distractions. We become more aware when we're in a telehealth session than just in our normal day-to-day routine. People are conditioned to read in-person body language and not necessarily body language on a screen. There can be awkward pauses, buffering, skipping. Again, that's why we encourage you to plug directly into our system using an Ethernet cable. Ethical listening requires multitasking, and we as humans, we are not built to multitask, at least not well. And real listening takes a lot of energy. So how can we help with our listening skills? We can use the power of pause. The average time there is silence in a conversation is 2.4 seconds. You'll want to listen to the speaker and be silent before responding. Don't be afraid after someone speaks to take a few minutes, maybe 5 to 10 seconds before you respond. Take purposeful pauses. If you slow down your voice, people are more likely to listen to you. And just a reminder, the average time that silence becomes uncomfortable for others is 4 seconds. So the power of silence. We can practice sitting in silence for 3 minutes a day. Just go into a room, shut the door, turn everything off, all your devices, the lights, anything that has a little hum, just turn everything off and just sit there and practice silence for 3 minutes. Set yourself a little timer. You can also intentionally listen to one person a day for 1 minute without interrupting them. And then you just simply say, "Thank you for sharing." We have the Pomodoro technique, and that is where for every 25 minutes of focused work, you take a 3-minute brain break. You can get up, no longer think about the task or project you were working on, get up and focus on something completely different, and then come back to the work you were doing. And then for every 52 minutes, you can take a longer break. 17 minutes would be optimal for 52 minutes of focused work. So people who listen typically have control of the conversation. When people feel understood, they feel cared about. When people feel cared about, they trust. And when people trust, they are more willing to listen. Keep that in mind. So moving on from the benefits and skills of ethical listening, we're going to end by going over some therapeutic interventions. So here we have the general therapeutic essentials. So it's important that we don't forget the standard skills that we have always used in sessions. These are the same skills you use in your face-to-face sessions. These are the skills that you learned when you were completing your undergraduate. It's all the same. So we have attending, reflecting and paraphrasing, silence, summarizing, rapport building, asking questions, immediacy, and focusing. Telehealth is just a different way to deliver the same services. Here are some ways that you can use your basic skills that you would normally utilize in face to face sessions, but now you're going to transition into using those when you're completing your services via telehealth. So you can decorate a mess. This may seem like something you would have to be in person to do, but you don't. You can get some art activities, ask your client to get some art activities that they have within their home, and a face mask. Everybody has a face mask somewhere in their home. So you guys can decorate masks together. On the front, you can decorate that and have your client decorate it by showing things or putting things on there that others can see. What do they allow others to see about them or to know about them? And then on the inside, you can have them place what do they hide from the outside world? What do they keep secret? What do they hold close to their chest? And from there, that can open up a whole new conversation, and you can discuss those different things as to why they hide different things or why they're more willing to show the world other things. You can have them look in the mirror, and they can say positive statements to themselves. Here we have a list of different YouTube videos that you all can watch together. Here we have a progressive muscle example, an imagery, guided imagery example, and a mindfulness example. So once you have practiced sharing your screen, as I've previously discussed, and you have made sure that all of your links work and your websites work, you can watch these lists of videos here together, and you guys can practice the different interventions or techniques with your client. After you watch the video, you can demonstrate the skill for your client, and then you can have them demonstrate the skill as well. So here we have the butterfly hug, and we are going to watch this one together. Or maybe we're not. Let's see if we can get it to play. Here we go.
So we're going to finish off tonight with just a bit of a grounding technique. This is called the butterfly hug. You can do it with crossing your thumbs and hands in front of you and alternating here. If it's more comfortable to just tap on the shoulders, you're welcome to do that. And if that's not quite comfortable, feel free to go ahead and put your hands on your knees or your legs and you can tap gently to yourself there. This is a wonderful, wonderful grounding technique because you can take this anywhere. And so whether it be at the office to help just bring down that intensity of emotion for a moment, whether it be at home, whether it be before bed, this is really, really beneficial and whenever you need to get that emotion down a bit. So for those who'd like, you're welcome to join me. If it's more comfortable just to watch me, you're welcome to. You can also close your eyes, and so whatever's going to be best and most comfortable for you. So let's go and get started. And let's go and get started by just finding where it's most comfortable for us. Just kind of experiment. Does this feel good here? Does this feel good here or on your knees? So take a moment to find that. When you find that place, let's go and get started with just a deep breath in. So taking a deep breath in, when you reach the top, hold for just a moment, and then exhaling. Just let it come out, just natural as can be. And then just slowly start tapping. Just alternating sides, alternating the taps, knowing that whatever you choose is A-okay. If you'd like, you're also welcome to add a positive affirmation to this. It may be I am loved. It could be I can do this. It may be I am in a secure and safe place. Whatever seems to fit for what your need is right now. Feel free to just add that in and just repeat it to yourself in your head. And just remembering to keep tapping for as long as it's comfortable. If you need to go a little harder, you're welcome to. If it needs to be gentle. Again, just experimenting and see what fits for you right now. And you're welcome to do that. And go as short or as long until you feel just a little bit calmer or until you feel that that's good enough for today. So, again, just breathing in and out and just tapping. Tapping for long as you'd like. And then, whenever you're ready, when you've hit that spot that feels a-okay or good enough, go ahead and just pause there for a moment. Just letting your hands rest, letting your body rest. And if you'd like, feel free to take one more deep breath in, holding for just a moment, and then when you're ready, exhaling, just letting the air flow out all natural and just whatever comes. That's a butterfly hug. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so that was the butterfly hug, which is a grounding technique, an EMDR grounding technique. That was a perfect example of an activity that you could possibly do with your clients, and you can have them demonstrate that to you as well, so that you can ensure that they have the knowledge to complete the activity on their own. So another activity we have is where you can ask your client to share their favorite song. You guys can look up the lyrics and talk about why they like that song, or you can have them share a song that they may listen to when they're maybe happy, sad, angry, or scared. Again, you'll want to look up the lyrics to this new song. You can share your screen, have them explain why listening to certain music when they feel a certain type of way, have them explain why they're feeling a certain way when they listen to a song, or they can find a song that describes themselves. You can use images by sharing your screen. You can have your client create their own illustration of the concept, thought, or idea you were exploring. And then you can look at the similarities and differences, and you can then dive into your client's understanding. So the news can be turned into an intervention or activity. Ask your client to create a news show based on their life or their family life or even school. They should report what is currently happening. This is a great activity to both acknowledge and diffuse from intense feelings. Your client will then present the news to you on the screen. They'll be the newscaster. The interview. You can ask your client to interview their parent about the job of being a parent. Then you can switch and your parent interviews your child about being a kid or any recent experience. You can have your client interview a stuffed animal, maybe a doll, an action figure, and discuss their feelings. You can interview a housemate or a staff or have them interview their best friend about the life in the times of COVID. And then you can have them present it to you. This activity is called Use What Is There. What does the client have laying around them? Ask questions about the object and its importance. For example, you can ask them if they pick up if it's a child with a toy car, you can ask, how far will you go in the car? How far will you go? How fast will you go? Where are you guys going? Who's going with you? Who can't go? And if they say somebody can't go, ask them why they can't go. They can write out a story of the journey and read it back to you. Your client can then become the editor of their own story. They can ask if they pick up a stuffed seal. They could ask, how does the seal feel? How does the seal deal? So how does the seal deal with their feelings, their emotions, their conflicts or challenges? In other words, how do they cope? Objects like me. Have your client look for inanimate objects around their home or their space and have them describe how they are like that object. Or for homework, you can have them create an all about me bag to share during their next session. For example, if they put in their bag a roll of paper towels, they could describe themselves as someone who's always cleaning up everyone else's mess. Or if they have a stapler or paper clip, the statement could be, because I'm trying to hold everything together. Or even on a more positive note, we could have a flower pot and they could state, because I'm always trying to grow. Here we have the emotional scavenger hunt. This is a virtual scavenger hunt of feelings that you can complete with your client. You can have them complete this on their own, or you can even complete this yourself to show them that you are invested and that you buy into the activity, and you can show how it can be beneficial to them in their personal lives. Grand tour. A lot of information can be gained by the clinician when completing this activity with your client. So it opens the door for you to be able to explore other dimensions into your client's life that maybe you didn't have the privilege or the opportunity to explore if you had been having an in-person session. So for Grand Tour, it's kind of like show and tell. So you'll ask the client to show me your room. You can ask them what do they love the most, what do they like the least, who was the last person who visited them in their room, and you can ask them what do they use within their room to comfort themselves. Then we have the Grand Tour Home Edition. Now, you want to keep in mind that it's best to get permission from everyone in the house before going on a grand tour. So, again, you would ask your client to show me your home. Ask them which room they like the most, which room are they most comfortable in, where do they spend the most time at, ask them who spends the most time in each room, ask them where their safe space is, have them show you. Then you can ask them questions along the lines of why do they feel safe there and what would they want to add to their room to increase their feelings of security. So there are many more interventions that you can use during your telehealth sessions with your clients. These were just a few to get you started, and they'll also be listed at the end of the video. So in conclusion, telehealth was seeing growth as a preferred means of providing services prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and has become an invaluable method of providing services during the pandemic. Telehealth is predicted to have continued growth as many have seen its advantages, including providing a solution to obstacles that may affect clients, such as travel and transportation, time management, or finding childcare. For many, it is the most convenient method and is allowing more individuals to receive services that otherwise may have had difficulties. As we move forward, it is important to consider the challenges that may come with telehealth services. So, plans can be made to improve effectiveness in delivery and creating ways to ensure active participation of our clients choosing to receive services via telehealth. Here we have the page that we list the resources that Stacey Grano used to compile this PowerPoint for us today. Next, we have the websites listed. Here we have the progressive muscle example, the guided imagery, mindfulness technique, as well as the butterfly hug, which we watched together. And then we have a list of the interventions and activities as well. So I hope this training has been beneficial to you. Again, my name is Letitia Smith, and welcome to MyQuest. You all have a great day.